Welcome back, gamers, to another episode of Kentucky Esports Weekly, refreshed by Coca-Cola. I am your host, Nathan Stevens, and we're going to go on a journey this week and find some things out. We're 1 week away from June arriving, which means we're getting closer and closer to the true introduction of Sony's PlayStation 5. At the end of the show, I'm going to chat up Alex Cutadean about his thoughts on the system war, who he thinks is going to win this upcoming generation, and why. That should be a lot of details in that one. If you don't know Alex, you know beyond that guy who pops up in during the wrap-up and goes one-on-one with me with some video game questions. He's basically like a human sponge when it comes to just learning about hardware and software and how it's all dissected. It's really quite impressive when he gets on a good roll. And after hearing him for the last few episodes, I trust him completely with giving a really well-informed opinion about both systems. And hopefully he won't cop out and be like, well, the PC. And yeah, we all know the PC is better than everything. But it'll be nice to see his perspective on which system is going to be ready to go. So that said, much like Smashing Pumpkins once said, the beginning is the end is the beginning, and here we are, beginning one show, ending the intro, and beginning quick hitters. All right, starting things off with quick hitters. As we've been reporting the last few weeks, PUBG's PCS North American Charity Showdown with a $200,000 prize pot kicked off this past week on May 21st, and the initial stage ran through the 24th. So that was a nice little competition. Teams were competing for a $100,000 prize pot, and while PUBG added to it, it was providing an additional $100,000 to COVID-19 relief through the charity of the winning team's choice, which is super, super nice. They didn't have to do that, but they did. So beyond this week, the PCS group stage will kick into high gear starting May 29th and continue for the next 3 weekends. So if you're looking for something to watch that isn't Netflix or HBO Max, then you should tune in. There's nothing like watching players gaming for a large prize pot while helping out those in need. It's always excellent stuff, especially on the esports side of life. So on to a different side of life I didn't know was so big. Clash Royale League West is set to return via online format. To be absolutely transparent about this, I had no idea that Clash Royale was like so big. And not until I saw it one March Madness being advertised on TV, I was like, wow, that cost a pretty penny. I was very baffled. I didn't know this game made enough money to warrant a March Madness commercial, because those really aren't cheap. Apparently it did, and apparently I didn't play this game enough to be well informed. So anyway, my ignorance aside, Clash Royale League West is set to return in a new online format on May 23rd. Developer Supercell, is ready to go, and CRL will feature 8 teams from North America, Latin America, and Europe. The teams will be competing in a 2-season tournament with an overall prize pot topping $300,000. Quite the chunk of change. The first season of CRL runs from May 23rd through July 11th, while the second will start in late August, heading towards CRL finals. The latter of the season's schedule has not yet been determined, but I'm sure it will. And that is what I've got this week for esports quick hitters. Monon Rahman is actually back for more virtual racing news and iRacing updates, so please take it away, sir.
Hi everyone, Monon here with some more sim racing news. Usually we would have seen a lot of really big and important races take place over Memorial Day weekend, as Formula 1, IndyCar, and NASCAR all host some of their biggest crown jewel events on that weekend. However, it was a little bit different this year due to the COVID-19 situation, and while NASCAR was still able to host their Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte without any fans in the stands, Formula 1 and IndyCar still had to postpone their Indy 500 and race in Monaco. That being said, there was still no shortage of competition at those two venues, although this time it was all virtual. Let's take a look at some of the big open-wheel esports events that took place instead of the Indy 500 and the Monaco Grand Prix. Saturday saw a lot of activity from the IndyCar community. The day started off with the Legends Trophy Race Series take to Indianapolis Motor Speedway in R Factor 2. The series hosted many global superstars such as Mario Andretti, Jan Magnussen, Jenson Button, and Fernando Alonso. Alonso and Button fiercely battled for the win throughout the race, with Alonso barely holding Button off to take the win. The rest of the day saw some other events in iRacing, with the Better Half Invitational taking place next. The Better Half Invitational put a neat twist on the IndyCar iRacing Challenge that took place a few weeks ago. This invitational brought together various significant others from the IndyCar driver community and pitted them against each other to reverse the roles and let the drivers worry from the sidelines for once. The Invitational hosted two 25-lap races at a virtual worldwide technology raceway, with the highest average finisher donating to a charity of their choice. Both races put on a lot of close racing between many of the spouses in IndyCar, and it was quite impressive to see how good the races were, given how recently many of them were introduced to sim racing. Gracie Norton barely beat Lauren Cannon to the line in Heat 1, but Cannon bounced back and won in Heat 2, making her the highest average finisher and winning the overall Better Half Invitational. Another unique event that was held in place of the Indy 500 was the Fake 500. In the Fake 500, drivers ran the same 200-lap length of the Indy 500, but with the much older Lotus 79, one of the most iconic Formula One cars in history, due to its ingenuity and aerodynamics back in the late 1970s. Drivers such as NASCAR's Landon Castle, Parker Kligerman, and Garrett Smithley participated along with iRacing enthusiasts, with Kevin Klick taking the victory. Across the pond, we saw the Monaco Grand Prix take place virtually in Codemasters F1 2019. With a combination of various current Formula One drivers as well as drivers from other open-wheel series, the field was stacked with significant pro talent. However, Williams F1 driver George Russell was able to take the lead at the beginning and dominate on his way to his second virtual GP win so far. While virtual racing still can't fully replace what's been tradition on Memorial Day weekend, it definitely helped fill the void on what's been called the greatest day in motorsports for so many years. It's still fun to watch some form of racing while many of the series are on hiatus, and hopefully this still helps the sim racing community help cement its place in both the esport and racing world as a whole.
Thank you, Monon. And that is all we have for you today with Quick Hitters. Shifting gears here, pun very much intended. It's Hailey and Tyler with industry news.
Hello, I'm Hailey Salyers.
And I'm Tyler Ralston.
And welcome to this week's industry news. First, let's talk about one of the year's most eagerly anticipated games. The Last of Us 2 is set to release in less than a month. To celebrate the release, Sony will be offering a limited edition bundle for the PS4 Pro that includes the game, a digital voucher, and a console and controller with unique The Last of Us designs. The console will be engraved with the design based on Ellie's firm tattoo, while the controller will feature the game's logo on the touchpad. The digital voucher will offer buyers access to exclusive avatars, themes, and other game features. Sony is also offering some standalone items, such as a wireless headset with the same firm design. While the bundle is expected to sell for around $400, the controller can be purchased individually for an expected $65. Sony's limited edition PS4 Pro bundle should be available with The Last of Us 2's launch on June 19th.
Next, NetherRealm Studios released a new trailer for their expansion to the Mortal Kombat 11 storyline titled Aftermath. This follow-up will continue from the original ending, with Liu Kang being responsible for the creation of a new timeline after the defeat of Kronika. It appears that most of the cast will be returning, as expected, alongside characters from past games making a new appearance such as Fujin and Shiva. As for the newest guest addition to the game's lineup, RoboCop is set to dole out his own brand of justice with the voice of Peter Weller.
Mortal Kombat Aftermath will also bring back friendship animations. These moves, meant to be comedic and non-violent, will be available to all Mortal Kombat players as free DLC, not just those who purchase the Aftermath expansion. NetherRealm has already released a video showcasing some of the friendship animations. Mortal Kombat Aftermath was released digitally on May 26th, and the physical copy is expected in the Americas this June.
In a smaller bit of news, Paradise Lost is a game being developed by Polyamorous and published by All In Games. It has also received a cinematic trailer, and while it doesn't show gameplay, it certainly sets quite a foreboding tone. According to the website, Paradise Lost is going to be a mystery adventure title set in a time where the Nazis resorted to nuclear annihilation before World War II would end. The player is a 12-year-old boy who finds his way into a Nazi bunker after wandering through the wasteland of a post-nuclear Poland. The experience is centered around exploring the 5 stages of grief while exploring the bunker to discover its secrets. And the game is said to lack fail states and feature simplistic controls to allow for an inclusive and fulfilling experience. Paradise Lost is being designed on Unreal Engine 4 for PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC, with an estimated release around the third quarter of 2020.
Switching gears, Sony recently announced in a corporate strategy meeting that they would be announcing the game lineup for the PS5 soon. None of the titles have been announced yet, but given the expected release of the PS5 this fall, fans are taking soon to mean this summer. Sony had already stated that they would not be attending E3 this year, long before the event's cancellation. This could mean that the company already has big plans for announcements in place. And given the rise in game demand and PlayStation Plus subscriptions during the lockdown, players are eager to hear what those plans and announcements may be.
Finally, Mafia Trilogy has been announced with a trailer and plenty of details being released. Mafia Trilogy is a collection of the Mafia series, with faithful graphical touch-ups to Mafia 2 and 3, and a full remastery of the original Mafia. According to their website, Mafia Definitive Edition will support 4K and HDR, as well as receiving improvements to overall graphics and gameplay, and new features such as additional collectibles and motorcycles. As stated before, Mafia 2 and 3 will also receive touch-ups for their definitive versions and include the additional story and bonus content. Owners of the original versions of Mafia 2 and 3 will receive their definitive versions for free on their platforms, and those who own a combination of the titles will receive discounts to the price for completion of the set. On top of this, pre-ordering the new Mafia Trilogy and/or linking your 2K account to the platform on which you own these titles will grant players a number of bonus items in each game. The Mafia Definitive Edition is set for a August 28, 2020 release date, with pre-orders available as a standalone title or within the Mafia Trilogy set, while the definitive versions of Mafia 2 and 3 are available now. And that's all for this week's industry news. Now back to Nathan.
Thank you, Hailey and Tyler. Good folks, Ben Branscum is back this week with a wonderful interview with Dr. Kishonna Gray, an assistant professor at the University of Illinois Chicago, who focuses on gender and women's studies in the Department of Communication there. She has an extensive background in gaming, and Ben was able to sit down with her and discuss just that.
Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. And today I have the honor and privilege of speaking with Dr. Kishonna Gray. Kishonna, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on. I kind of want to give a little bit of background to who you are and what you do for everyone at home.
Absolutely. So I guess in my official professional role, I'm an assistant professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago. In my personal life, I am a mom who's a gamer, and gaming is my life. I've been a lifelong gamer, and my children are gamers. So we have like a whole household. Like there's multiple consoles in every bedroom, every room, living room, everywhere. It's kind of crazy actually. But, I research video games, and I developed the passion for the research part only in graduate school when I realized that gaming was something that could be like an academic endeavor. I didn't realize that, until I had an office mate. He was doing his research in video games, and I was like, wow, we could do that. And he was like, yeah, we can. And so, I kind of switched and it stuck. So I am a cultural scholar of video games.
Nice. I know we have a few people here at the University of Kentucky. I know the first interview we did for this was Dr. Anthony Lampiris, and he does research in gaming based, and I've helped him on a few projects of just helping him understand a little bit more about streaming. So that's really cool that it's just it's cool to see people researching video games. It's something that I feel like in the research part of the world, it's not really talked about as much. Right. And I had a professor always kind of hint at we don't know the implications of modern technology, and we're starting to research them. So that's really cool that gaming's part of it. I do want to ask then, talk about your research and what you've done.
Sure, absolutely. So, my earliest work, I guess, stemming from my dissertation work, really just explored the experiences and realities of women of color, of Black and brown women in Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, in these online gaming communities. And so, it was not a big shocker for me, for what I found, because I came into this work because of my own experiences as a Black woman in gaming. And so, I really became interested, like in graduate school, around this kind of research because of my own experiences, my personal experiences, with racism and sexism in the gaming space. And so I immediately just reached out to, the folks who I considered, friends, some of the folks that I played with like online. And of course, they all said the same thing. Everybody was telling the same story. And that story was that, when we entered like a gaming space and when somebody could hear how we sounded, they would immediately engage in a whole barrage of racist speech or sexist speech or xenophobic, kind of like, speech. If, we had friends that spoke with accents and, so there will be all kind of colorful, like language, directed, towards us. And so that early work led me down like a pathway, like to really explore this through linguistic profiling, because it was during that time where, it wasn't, video, wasn't really a thing. Streaming wasn't really a thing. So all these communities, most communities were text-based, but some of the console communities were more, were voice audio based, right? So, everybody just went by how you sound. And I was really, I got intrigued with this research because I remember during that time I had took a class, where the researchers, were talking about the liberatory potentials of how like these internet and digital technologies could free us from the confines of the body, right? Where we can go online and that New Yorker magazine, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. That has never been true for women, people of color. That has just never been true, right? Because there's this assumption that all dogs are white dudes, and then, whenever you, factor in other elements, our real world bodies and our real world selves are actually emitted into these digital spaces. So we can't, I remember reading, it was a really cool, there was like somebody had wrote an article about their experiences in like some of the earlier chat groups, like the sex chat groups. I promise it's not going to get graphic. I'm just going to share a bit. I promise it's not too graphic. But as there were two people going back and forth, about how the things that they wanted to do to each other, like sexually, right? And then, the gentleman who, from the reading it, we could probably presume he was a white man, he said, I want to rub my hands over your vanilla body. And the response was, well, it's a little more chocolate, but please continue to rub, And then that like ended the whole thing. It was like, hey, wait a minute, you're black. And she was like, yeah, is that okay? So all this time they had been like engaging like in this chat space, and he never knew, that she was black. But it was like those small kinds of like cues that, had, revealed, aspects of her identity. Whereas, she thought they were just like engaging and it didn't matter, what their physical bodies were, but, it actually did. So I was fascinated by that. I wanted to explore like the different ways that, how do we, disclose of those kinds of things, whether intentional or not intentional. Like, so for instance, like our speech practices, how somebody might pronounce some words in a space, or, the pauses that some people might take. Like I have to take a pause, like to go check on kids. And some people might assume, well, that's a person who's a woman who has children that has to go, go check on kids. So there are different ways, these different kinds of coded ways that, our race and our gender and different aspects of our identity are like emitted into these, digital spaces. So that was my earlier work. And so now, I'm continuing. I think I'm just ending really like this 10-year ethnography, so once, my dissertation, I did that data and that was done. And so I continued it and I started asking different questions and started exploring these different things. So that book is going to be released in the fall, actually, Intersectional Tech. And so that's where my research is right now.
Nice. That's actually really cool. I know I haven't had the privilege to do as much research. I just wrapped up my undergraduate, but like I had a couple classes, one of them a hybrid between grad and undergrad. And we talked about like the gaming industry and like how there is a lot of good that it's done and doing, but there also is a lot of negative, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusivity and just being more open, unfortunately. And there are games that are working for that, like we talked about in the class, but I like hearing your research on that really is like eye-opening to me, because I feel like I might have actually referenced one of your research papers in my paper at one point. So
awesome.
I think I'd have to double back and check, but I'd have
hashtag cite her work. Hashtag cite her work. Flash that on the screen.
we'll do that too, I'm sure. So I do have to ask then, kind of talk about just your personal opinion and your experiences with esports and kind of like the sudden boom, especially now with the world that we're living in.
Absolutely. So I kind of accidentally fell into like esports research, right? So within ethnography, and ethnography allows me like the freedom to basically explore particular cultures without like the strict parameters of, keeping like research contained, because a lot of research, you have, strict protocols, of like, strict questionnaires, you have to control all the variables, right? And so an ethnography allows me to just kind of like observe a phenomenon as it's happening, right? And so one of the phenomena that happened while I was exploring, doing this research was, the Twitch and Mixer, the streaming technologies. And so I had a lot of folks who were part of that study were like, hey, we're going to be doing streaming now. And I'm like, oh, what's that? What's streaming? And so they introduced me to this world of streaming. And so one of the first conversations that I had with them, this was there were conversations with men who identify as Black men. And they made the comment, they said, we thought it was going to be cool, but we didn't factor, how people would respond to us when they see us on the screen, seeing like a Black man on this screen. And one of in the comment section, it's always the comment section. So, they started like looking through their comment section and seeing how racialized it was, right? And they said it wasn't like it wasn't always, overtly racist. But like, for instance, there was like, and this is like the title of one of my articles. Actually, it's not one of the titles of one of my articles, but there was a comment inside there that I thought was very, very significant. That commenter posted on this Black man streaming page and said, you'd have a larger following if you weren't so urban. And then, the guy, he asked me, he was like, what does that mean? Like, if I wasn't so urban, like, what is he trying to say? Like, I'm too city-like? I'm like, no, that's racial code for you're too Black. And then so we started talking about like the content, that he had like on his streams. And he said, well, I don't really talk about like Black issues. And this was like right before, Black Lives Matter, kind of like,
Okay.
Even before Gamergate. So it was before a lot of those things. This was just like this early conversation. And he said, I'm just going on the game. I'm playing the game. I'm giving folks strategies on how to like beat the game. That's all I'm doing. And I said, that's something that he never really, he understands that he's like a Black man, but he had never like, I don't want to say he had deracialized his platform. He just wanted to be like a gamer, right? He didn't want to be like a niche gamer saying, oh, I'm a Black guy. He just said, I'm a gamer like everybody else and doing what everybody else is doing. And I said, well, that's beautiful. I love that. And I wish that could exist. That could be your reality. But when folks see you, there's this visceral reaction because a lot of folks have never had, seen this Black person that's been in this authority figure. Well, and I say authority figure. I use the word authority because, he was like, well, I'm not trying to be an authority, but I'm like, people are coming to you for information about a game. They're coming to you for strategy. So they do see you as like an authority and an expert in this, right? And so, and that poses a problem if a person has never, had like a Black teacher or like a person or anybody, like any adult around them that is like a Black person. It's hard for them to accept. And I was like, think about everybody's like reactions to like Obama as the first Black president. Like, see where we are now because of the Black dude that was in the White House. I was like, so it poses like a problem for a lot of people who aren't ready, to see different kinds of races like on an equal plane. And so what he did like an experiment, right? So in this experiment, he streamed and where he was showing his face, we could see that he was a Black man. And then in another stream, he did 3 different things. And then in another stream, he streamed and he distorted his voice and had like a little puppet like on the corner of the screen that wasn't actually him. And then he distorted like the voice of that one. And then he would also stream and just show the content and wouldn't show his face at all, right? So the stream where he had, his face showing at the lowest views, right? They always consistently, nobody really tuned in for those, and those comments are very racialized. Now, in the one where he disguised and distorted his voice, those were the streams that had the most kind of most views and most hits. And in the one where he didn't show his face at all, he really didn't he couldn't really tell the difference. But the one where he had the little puppet was very interesting because it was one day where these were different different accounts also. So people didn't know that all this was him, right? And so in the account that where he had the little, it was a chipmunk. I don't want to say chipmunk because then people could probably go and find out who this person is. So I'm trying to, maintain, his privacy and everything. But whenever he was doing the little chipmunk sounds and the chipmunk voices, people loved that character. But it was very much, the character was rooted in like a comic relief. It was comedic. It was over the top, kind of a lot of a lot of like Black vernacular. It was like a lot of like stereotypical like Black kinds of things happening in the stream, right? And that's not his traditional regular kind of persona. But people love that. And he wanted to know, he's like, why are people, so excited about that? I was like, well, you have to know a little bit about, how people can consume Blackness in their lives, right? People can, this is like from media theory, like from like film and cinema kinds of studies, like people will consume Blackness when it is given to them or fed to them in 3 different ways. One of those ways is as a criminal element, right? We consume movies, we consume characters like in a criminal light, right? That's something that's comforting and soothing for the psyche, because we know that this is like a character that is being that will that like the wheels of justice will happen, to go and get that person, control that person, incarcerate that person, so that's comforting, right? And then the other one is like as comic relief, like a buffoon kind of character. And then this character, it's not a threatening character. It's not threatening the status quo. It's not trying to get like it's not trying to get power or overtake whiteness or anything like that. So that's also like the sidekick, that's like, part of like that the buddy sidekick kind of films. And even, we're seeing this theme also happening in games. And the third one is the help, right? So if you're just helping the white savior, in the movie, helping this person along, these are non-threatening kinds of characters. And even as the criminal element, even though that's the criminal character could be threatening in some context, it's still non-threatening, because we know the police are coming at any moment to come and haul this person or this entity away, right? So that's kind of like, the process that's happening. So that's why I was letting him know. I was like, that's a very successful role, because that's something that folks know. They know the comic relief. They know the buffoon kind of character. They know this because it has existed, from caricatures of like Blackness that stem back to like, blackface minstrelsy kinds of era, the silent film era. I was like, this is something that is common. So that's why it's successful. I was like, but as soon as you deviate from that, right? Because he let folks know that was him, right? And they thought that like, oh, you tricked us. This isn't who you really are. A lot of his followers really thought that he was like trying to pulling, the wool over their eyes or something. And he was like, this is all performance. Like everything that I'm doing in this stream is like performance. Like none of this is really real. Even the informational ones are performance. So I think he learned a lot about himself, but he also learned a lot about like the world during those kinds of moments. But that's kind of like been the focus of like me and watching the streams, really like experiencing like the performative elements of like what women have to do when they're streaming, what folks of color have to do when they're streaming, what people with accents have to do, either, over like jumping head in and like overdoing like an accent, like the Sofia Varga, is that her name? I think, somebody, there's been like some writing about, how she like overdoes like an accent or whatever, I can't really speak to that, but I remember reading that somewhere. But it's really just interesting to see people who deviate from that, right? And just seeing how they're not successful, they don't do well. And then, there was another one. I'm so sorry. I'm thinking about all these examples like at one time. At the time where when Black Lives Matter, was happening, I think it was after the death of Eric Garner. One streamer that I follow, kind of dedicated a lot of his streams to like raise money for like, burial. I think, the country was kind of rallying around, making sure that these folks got buried and had, proper care in death. And he, devoted a lot of his streams to that. And so many of his followers were like, that's not why we watch you. Why are you doing this? This is not the space for like Black Lives Matter. And that's when he was like, wait a minute, this is my platform. I can do whatever I want. But I think that also like made him realize that, hey, as a public figure, as a public kind of like, gaming figure, his platform, if he wants to continue to have the success that he does, he's going to have to like give into like what audiences want. And I asked him, I was like, well, that's something that you're going to have to think, like, do you see this as your platform, or is your platform enabled by these people who are watching you and tuning in and doing likes and subscribes and, donating money? So I was like, he really had like this moment where he had to think, what kind of streamer do I want to be? And I think he dedicated, he said, I want to do the social justice work. I don't care, whatever they call me or what they do. I was like, he said, I have a platform and I want to make sure that I'm doing justice at the end of the day. Yeah. So that's kind of the streamers that like I follow, like the folks who are like accidental activists, I think is what I call them, like in my book, because a lot of them, they realized they had these huge platforms and they could reach people and they could, they could sway conversations and influence conversation. So, those are kind of like the folks that I follow. Yeah.
That's awesome. I know just in the time and the content creators that I follow too on certain communities, like it's interesting to see how much of a sway that they do have and create, and kind of at times how they don't really realize that and the power that comes with that. Like I've talked about in a couple of different classes, social media influencers and just what they actually mean and can do. So it's really interesting to see, like on the Twitch level and on the video game and streaming level and esports for that matter, just like what they are and what they can mean. I do want to ask, so kind of just looking to the future in a little bit, talk about how, in your opinion, like number one, not only esports, but just the gaming community can, one, grow, and number two, just be more inclusive and more open to different demographics and just overall ideas and just overall acceptance.
Sure. I appreciate your question. It's a tough question, right? Because there are so many factors that influence my response, right? So, I think the first part of my response is just recognizing that these platforms are commodities, right? A lot of them exist like to generate profit. A lot of them exist as marketing tools, right? And then I think about, at the end of the day, a lot of folks, want to make money. They want to sustain these platforms. They want people to continue to come to the platform, right? So some folks, they asked me, for instance, why they were like propping up, like, for instance, like a person like Ninja, or why a person like PewDiePie, gets like a YouTube contract, when they have been problematic in the past, right? Mm-hmm. Racist, anti-Semitic, sexist, right? Xenophobic. And then they said, how could a person like this, who a lot of folks feel that their content is marginal, they're not that great at gaming, they're mostly like inflammatory. And then I was like, well, you have to think, let's think back to a couple moments, right? So I believe, was it last year, 2015, 2016, I believe Ninja was on the front of the ESPN cover, right? Yeah. And that essentially, propped him up as like the face of the esports world, right? At the same time, Sonic Fox had won the Esports Gamer of the Year award, like from the gaming. I can't even think about the entity, but but he won the award. He's like the number one like gamer like of the year, right? And that's like it's part like popularity contest. I think there are some metrics that go behind how they could win, right? And these things were like incongruent for a lot of folks, right? There was like here we have Ninja as an entity that continues to get like propped up, but then the gaming community rallies around like a person like Sonic Fox, right? And I was like, well, you have to think about who Sonic Fox is, right? Sonic Fox is a queer Black man, maybe he uses like they, them pronouns a whole lot. They walk around in a furry suit, that beautiful blue fox that, that they walk around in all the time, right? And I said, you have to think about, what's been constructed around like the identity of a gamer, right? Sonic Fox is not the construction of what a gamer is. Mm-hmm. In fact, Sonic Fox is like the antithesis of what a lot of folks feel, right? Because like a lot of like this tech geek masculinity, has really adopted, a lot of elements of like toxic masculinity, adopted those elements of exclusion. Like this is our space, it's like a boys' space, it's a good old boys network. We put our people on and everything. Sorry about that. They really have like, adopted like a lot of those principles. So then if you think about a person like Sonic Fox, first off, his masculinity doesn't match up right? Because he's got a queer masculinity, and then you have to think he's Black on top of that. And then people, still have the assumption that Black folks are not gamers. And here, Sonic Fox is like, at the top of their game, really outperforming, outshining, doing all these amazing things. And is a nice person, not inflammatory, not, making jokes and, saying problematic things. And then you would think that would be the one that we would rally behind and say, okay, we're not going to get in trouble. Sonic Fox is going to get, we're not going to have to apologize or go on a PR campaign, because they just spouted the N-word on their stream, right? But no, that's not what is happening, right? And so when you think about, the future of like streaming and the future of esports, that future is still going to make money, and that future is still going to be like catered to a particular demographic, a demographic that I consider like the default gamer. We're still, where white men are the ones that are, propped up and elevated as the go-to model, as the folks that we're going to aspire to and aspire to be. So with that in mind, do I think that the future of esports is inclusive? It's not going to be not by design, right? It's going to have to be like a lot of pushback and a lot of fights. And people are going to say, hey, well, what about this trans character that just won this amazing tournament? Don't forget about them, right? And so I think there's going to have to be like a movement even, like I'm thinking about like for instance, like Oscar's So White, like Game So White's going to happen. Gaming's even going to have its reckoning with hashtag Me Too because of, all these problematic kinds of things. So it's not like a beautiful space, for everybody to just come in. So I think there's a lot of work that, we still need to do. But the beautiful thing, I will say, is that if people could just like ignore, those kinds of the larger platforms, ignore the corporate entities that are like behind a lot of, pushing a lot of these platforms, we can still have beautiful communities. And that's like where a lot of my research is focusing on. I'm like, okay, and so most of the women of color, they're streaming with their, couple hundred people and they're having a great day, which a couple hundred folks in the stream is a great number, right?
Yeah.
It's a great number. And I think, that folks, a lot of folks just have to be content with that. But whenever we see like the model of like how much money could be made, and then we see how large, the following is for like a lot of these folks. And then when we see what the template is, that template, I'm thinking about, for instance, I remember hearing like a lot of stories of like early stories about like, for instance, like Ninja, and people would say he would steal people's content all the time. Like he would see somebody streaming and saying and doing certain things, and then he would bring in and, put that into like some of his streams. And, and that's a common practice, right? Of, people's content and everything being stolen. So I don't know, I'm not trying to, be on like I'm not anti-Ninja. I don't really have like an opinion really about Ninja, but a lot of the conversations around streaming often point back to PewDiePie and Ninja. So they are really these central figures like in this world, whether people like it or not, so, but I just think I like these platforms because we can do, folks can do what they want. And like, cause I could just get on and stream. I could have like a whole Black feminist, kind of stream and have people who are into that tune in. And then I don't have to worry about, those outside elements.
So Dr. Gray, I know you're probably very busy, so we'll let you go, but I do have one last question. What are you playing right now?
Oh, fantastic question. I've reached a point. I'm so sorry. I have everything's so convoluted, right? I have to have like this whole story behind like, because I could just say I'm playing Apex and Warzone, but I want to give like the why behind that,
it's
right?
Okay.
I think being quarantined, I want to play something that is not so intense and I can just like run and gun, right? So I love button smashers and shooters, so I don't really have to think. So that's why I haven't played like Animal Crossing. I haven't played The Sims. Those games like require me to have to like think about like what I'm doing. And I'm just not in a moment or an era where I want to do that, right? So right now, the games that I'm playing are Apex Legends. I love Apex Legends. And of course, Warzone. And I'm trying to think about the third game I'm playing, Overcooked. Overcooked is like those shoes. I love Overcooked, yeah. So that's what I'm playing right now. Yeah.
Nice. I've also been on the Warzone train a little bit, so I understand it is very nice to just kind of go in and wreck it all and then just leave and restart over again. So I totally understand that one.
That's right. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Gray, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. You take care.
What a really superb interview. Thank you, Ben, as well as Dr. Gray, for both your times. So speaking of time, guess what time we're at? Yep, Push to Talk with Nick Hughes and his Thunderous 3.
Hey, we're back. It's been a dry week for news, but one thing's for sure, Jude cheats at Pummel Party.
Yeah, I do.
He just admitted it?
Damn off.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does, dude. He sets you up and he tries to make an alliance with you and makes you seem important to him, and then he shoots you with a laser beam from across the map to ensure his victory.
Yeah, it's really good.
Hurts.
Yeah, and I did win, so it worked. It was the easiest game of my life. That's
I
all.
like to think I made it a little difficult for you, but that's okay.
Well, yeah.
But that's fine.
Anyway.
There's a Shrek mod for Resident Evil that's got some attention, which is pretty awesome.
That's
Kinda
pretty
wanna play that.
16.
I want to
so
play that. Apparently, it's pretty spooky.
Is
Yeah.
Shrek Nemesis?
I don't know.
Is it Mr. X? I'm assuming it's one of those two.
I would hope Mr. X.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would hope Mr. X, but I think it's Nemesis.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disappointing.
Call of
off
Duty
my-
Black Ops, the next Call of Duty title is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, which honestly kind of a funny title for that kind of game.
Yeah.
It is.
So isn't that just the first Black Ops again?
Well, that's what people are
Right.
saying. They don't know if it's going to be a reboot of the first one or just like.
I mean, I wouldn't hate that. I liked Blops. I like the original Blops.
Yeah. Say if they're gonna do that though, they have to bring back zombies from Blops Untouched, just better graphically, or else I won't be
Right.
interested at all. Because my problem is, and actually me and my friends that I play Modern Warfare with have been complaining because we don't know for sure what they're gonna do with it in the next few years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of risky because, a lot of the other games we play are games of service games. So, we'll have like at least a year plus more content, but we have no idea what's going to happen with Modern Warfare.
Right.
Because it's such a good game, honestly. Like, I don't even like COD. I really like this one.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to end really quickly.
And Warzone's been fun. I've been really enjoying Warzone.
Well, they've confirmed they're going to keep supporting Warzone, so.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if they wouldn't. That's got to be a moneymaker for them.
Yeah, you know what I heard? I heard that they were going to make Warzone like almost like a central hub for like Call of Duty games, and like characters from Black Ops will go into Warzone, and so like in the Black Ops menu you'll be able to like go into Warzone from that game, like
Interesting. I mean, that's a cool concept. What do
Sorry,
y'all know about Crucible?
I heard about it. I'm still
Not much.
I haven't played it yet, but I feel like I need to try at this point. It's like a shooter, but also like a MOBA.
Kind of, maybe. Don't
Kind of
quote me
maybe.
on that.
Their objective. Well, no, I've done some reading. I saw a video. Their objectives, like map objectives, which is not unlike MOBA.
when my friend
map
told me
objectives.
about. When my friend told me about Crucible, I was like, "Are you talking about Destiny 2?" Like,
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I never heard about it.
Yeah.
I was like, the PvP
That's what I
game mode in
thought.
Destiny? But
and I was like, "Wait, they're
That's
making it a
its
separate
own
game?"
thing.
That's what I thought.
That'd be an interesting idea if they did that, though.
But
Honestly.
like whenever you hear just like, and I admit this is unfair, but whenever I heard Amazon Games Crucible, I was hyper skeptical. I was like, yeah, that's not going to be good. I was like, yeah, that's going to be bad, not
I
fun.
didn't even know it was Amazon Games.
Yeah, I didn't know either. Huh.
It's
Amazon Games, whatever that is.
It looks like I can't tell if they played it safe or not. It looks kind of risky, and I honestly think if I'm Amazon Games, I wouldn't not play it safe the first game I make at least.
Yeah, just make a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
Just make a battle royale like everyone else.
I'm so tired of battle royales, but that's what I would have done for sure.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's where the money is right now with gamers. They all like, I want to waste my life.
Dude, just
Drop
make a
it
free
in
game
fire.
and make some 6 skins and then just prey on 12-year-olds who want to buy
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
I am like
That's the money-making model.
I'm
Apparently.
70% sure Halo is gonna get one, a battle royale.
Oh, no,
Please,
no.
stop.
No, I don't
No.
want
With
that.
all these
I believe
battle
it.
royales.
They are going to try it. I swear they are.
They won't
know,
stoop
my
that
thing
low.
I
is-
wouldn't
They
doubt
won't
would.
stoop that low.
Well, if I'm 3-4-3,
Can't believe
I'm
it.
already ruining the Halo franchise. So what good is a battle royale on the way down?
That is true.
Well,
Yeah,
no, I mean, but think
actually,
about it.
Jude has a good
They have the
point.
weapons. They have the different
Yeah.
weapons. They have the vehicles. They got the arm. Like they could do it essentially.
I mean, yeah, of course they could do it. Any
Yeah.
shooter could do it.
Yeah, I need.
Borderlands could
Person.
make one, but they won't. Oh, actually, that'd be kind of cool. A looter shooter, but you know what? Moving on.
Dude, could you imagine
Shooter.
a Borderlands one, but like all the
That's what I'm
guns
saying.
are completely like random, like it's not-
Randomized. Exactly.
Okay,
That
that
would
would be
be
fun.
cool.
That's a neat gimmick.
Right.
I would like to, yeah.
They
All
have
right,
so many
take the stream down.
varieties.
Take it down. Shut it down. Stream no further. We need to not let 2K games or Gearbox
Steal
steal
ideas.
from us.
Yeah.
It's like, look, there's people that are interested. Let's do it. I heard it.
That's
Where
fun.
Elias,
here.
what was that number for Take-Two games? How many games is Take-Two working on in the next 5 years?
93.
GTA is still in discussion, so it's a possibility, but it's not yet. They don't know if it's going to happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But the Pac-Man Live Studio is like Mario Maker, but Pac-Man.
Interesting.
That's pretty
That doesn't
interesting.
I feel like there aren't nearly as many possibilities for map making in Pac-Man as there are in Mario.
It's a thing.
That sounds cool though.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be
interesting.
multiplayer too. So
That sounds cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
that sounds
the
dope.
new Pac-Man stuff where you can play as the ghosts that people have been doing is pretty interesting, I think.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next month we're gonna have a ton of stuff to talk about because they're doing all their big live streams. I'm actually really, really pumped for those.
I am too.
I honestly think this is gonna be a better model than E3. Just they don't have a big crowd to please. They're doing their own thing.
Right. All the pressure's
they don't
off
have a physical crowd. Yeah, right. They don't have a physical crowd they need to make cheer.
Which group do you think is going to be like that you're most excited for?
I just want to see the PC gaming show. I think it's on June 6th. That's usually.
I'm curious about Microsoft.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's like all throughout the month of June is what they're doing. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have a PS4, and me and my friends have all been talking about, whether or not we're going to buy it on the PS5. And honestly, if Last of Us, I can play Last of Us on PS4. So, I honestly don't see a reason to get a PS5 since I have a PC. I don't think any exclusives can draw me to the PS5.
God of War 2.
There needs to
God of War is going to be awesome for sure, but I don't think I would get a PS5 just because of it. If Last of Us was strictly PS5, I think I would have to get a PS5.
That's fair.
I think this conference that Sony does will have to be they would have to announce some pretty crazy games for people to really get on the PS5 train.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brother's getting the PS5.
Those are never the absolute best that they can do, right? It'll be a little bit before the really, really good games come out for PS5, and then maybe we'll see. But
right, yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah, I'd wait honestly a little bit even after the launch just to see what kind of.
I still love all the clickbaity titles about how they're could this be the generation that the consoles overtake PCs? And the answer is literally always going to be absolutely not.
Yeah.
In case you can't tell, this is a biased segment, people.
Yeah. Don't take us too seriously. It's okay.
We are PC.
I don't hate consoles. Consoles are fine. Consoles.
No,
I'm more of a
just
console guy.
Gaming.
That's me.
It's whatever.
But you're not going to come in here live now and pretend like.
But you're not going to come in here and pretend your console's more powerful.
No. I value PC as well. I just don't have a really good one. But I know PC is
It's another thing. During quarantine, don't build a PC. Now's not the time to do it. Things are expensive because it's hard for places to keep.
Yeah, everything's triple, double the price.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Now's not the time to build a PC, but don't fall for pre-builts in this time. Just wait. Pre-builts are almost never the answer. They're overpriced and not as good. It's cheaper to just build your.
I actually was on Best Buy last night looking for some gaming laptops because I really needed one, and I saw Alienware. It was about $850, and it was marked down from $1,600. But they were sold out.
That's pretty good for an Alien. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's 16 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte of memory.
Wow, it's as good as my computer.
Oh, well,
my computer's old.
I know, mine is too. It's 5 years old.
Guys, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm pretty sure we've gone well over our allotted time.
Yeah, I was about to ask you.
So Nathan and company and Ben and everyone, don't hate us.
Hey.
Understand that we're just trying to have
fun. Talent.
This is what you get for good content.
Yeah, no, it's just
welcome, but also sorry. Please don't hate us. Don't cancel.
Yeah,
dude, we didn't even talk about the Club Penguin thing.
Well, just target it fast and disrespect everybody real quick.
10 second rundown. 10-second PG rundown. Elias, go.
Let's go.
All right, so Club Penguin had some fan servers after Disney shut it down. And then people were doing some racist and sexual stuff on it. And it got so much attention that Disney was like, hey, shut it down.
That was 16th. It sounds terrible. Club Penguin was a beautiful place, and they
Let's end on that note.
They ruined it.
they ruined it.
And it's bad
all right.
enough too that Disney's trying to shut it down, and that's why I think it's actually legit and
Right.
you should be worried.
Exactly. All right, guys. GG's. GG, easy game. Peace out, everybody.
Look at that. We got a space shuttle launch. Apparently, it's coming up. That's going to be kind of cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna try to get out before the space shuttle launch. We've got an eye on it. So what do you got going on, Nathan?
Well, we don't want to miss that. Before we go to the next subject at hand, I think those suits are mighty fancy. But okay, so between you and I, we like to answer questions with video games, but we should talk about a really, really important subject about who's going to win the next console generation. I know you love doing PC stuff, so it's always going to be Elite, like for the rest of its life. So, who's going to win, Alex? Who's going to win between PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X?
So before we get to that, I've got to announce June 4th next week at 4 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have Kevin Huang with Twitch Partnerships, and he's going to be joining us for our monthly speaker series. He's going to be interviewed by our own Thomas Bailey, who's with the University of Kentucky Esports Club. And so that's going to be an interview with Kevin Huang from Twitch. So, a lot of you gamers are Twitch fans, so tune in for that. And then on to the console wars. Yeah, so
I was way ahead of it. That's sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Anyway, yes, console wars. So what do you think?
That's okay. So console wars. We see this every few years, every console generation. It used to be Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, but really in the modern age, kind of Nintendo's really fallen off, and so our hardware leaders have really been PlayStation and the Xbox. And so one thing that really brings up is, Nintendo's still been successful. So ultimately it comes down to the software. I mean, you've brought this up before. Software is going to sell the console.
It is.
But when you look on paper, there's kind of introductory information. Nobody's really played any games yet. And on paper, both these systems look really similar, with a couple caveats. So you've got they're both using RDNA2 graphics cards. This will be like a Navi 2 based AMD card. These haven't really come out yet. There's been some leaks. They're expected to come out this fall for Windows machines. This will be a new architecture though, so we don't have all the details on what Navi 2 and RDNA 2 will bring, but we are pretty confident they'll both have ray tracing. And ray tracing is kind of the next generation of calculating how light interacts with an environment. But the one big difference I see, now there's a couple of small differences that people have brought up. The one big difference not a lot of people are talking about are how many compute units are on these cards. And compute units allow you to kind of write specialized code for a graphics card. And the Xbox is going to have 52 compute units. The PS5 is going to have 36. That could be one of the big determining factors, especially when you look at something like ray tracing. It's unclear. If you look at an NVIDIA card, they have specialized RTX cores to handle this ray tracing. I'm not sure if ray tracing will be handled on these compute units. Other things can be handled on them as well. And so while the PS5 graphics card is going to run at faster clock speeds, the Xbox potentially is going to have more throughput at a lower clock speed. So some things to consider there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Definitely not on the hardware, because good Lord, man, you do your homework and that's above and beyond what I can compute. I know that Mark Cerny from Sony was very high up on the hard drive speed, which I believe is clocked at 5 point something gigabytes per second, which is faster than any SSD right now on the market. And that was a really big selling point for the hardware. And I know that the general thing that's coming out from the development community is that they're having a good time programming on the PS5, and it's a lot easier than they thought it would be. And Xboxes still have some choke points to it, much like this current generation, where I think was it the SRAM or ERAM or something was a major choke point for the architecture on the Xbox One. But anything that makes a developer's life easier, you're probably going to get a lot of fans for, and that is notorious through the age. Notorious.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and you can kind of see that in kind of the first specs we're seeing. And so, kind of to touch on the storage speed, that over 4 gigabytes a second, you're starting to get into the territory of last generation memory speeds. And so you're almost to the point where transferring. So typically, when you are need to work on an asset quickly, you'll move that to system RAM. If you need to work on something very quickly, you move that to a cache on the CPU. The caches are very small, and it's kind of systematically as you get faster, you get smaller sources of memory. But a bottleneck has traditionally been that storage, that mass storage, which would be a hard drive, over 2 gigabytes a second, also very fast. But if you have near instant, and when you get in that 4 gigabyte range, it's almost instantaneous for most types of assets you want to load. And so I've heard rumors of potentially getting rid of any load times, which is definitely a possibility. But on the topic of development, so there's kind of two different strategies. It's very similar hardware. You're both RDNA 2 graphics cards, both using Zen 2 AMD CPUs. Mm-hmm. And the clock speeds are both above 3.5 gigahertz, which is quite fast. They're both 8-core CPUs. When you look at the Xbox side versus the PlayStation side, PlayStation has kind of consistent CPU core speeds with very fast GPU, and potentially with that very fast GPU, you can kind of throw more hardware at it or more processing power at it without having to do custom code. Now, some features enabled on the Xbox Series X, you can enable certain cores to run at a faster speed. Mm-hmm. You can also utilize those compute units for other tasks that are on the graphics card. So if you're able to write that custom code, I think the ceiling for the Xbox is going to be higher.
Sure.
But if you look at short term, like out of the gate performance, the PlayStation 5 is probably going to be easier to develop for. In the long term, though, most of your games, these are still pretty close. And most of the games are going to look really good. You might see a slight performance bump on the PlayStation or on one versus the other here and there, but side by side, I think you're going to get a really high quality 4K 60 gaming experience on both these systems. So yeah, what thoughts?
So you're getting closer to a PC, is that what you're saying?
Well, in a sense, and the big benefit though of these. They are x86 based processors. Benefit for console and PC gamers alike is ports are going to be easier. Development cycles are going to be easier because much more of that code is going to be able to transport over with less conversion needed to port those titles. But sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But
that's okay. It is amazing, like how similar they're going to be, and I hope, God, one of the things over the years is that people always demand like you pick one side or the other, and you never enjoy both. But I think two factors really come down. I know hardware is very similar, like as you stated, and over time people will learn how to use the hardware better. That's something we discussed prior to the show, just how you were telling me how around PlayStation 3, at the beginning of it was really rough, and toward the end of it, you were seeing some of the better games come out for it. And I think, it's all going to come down to games. It's probably going to, one big thing that that has been brought up over and over again through different discussions is Game Pass is going to be a big selling point. And I know Xbox almost came in first with the Xbox 360 for that generation if it wasn't for the Wii, but they did it solely on the Xbox Live construction. So having that sort of a new kind of ability, I know Game Pass isn't new, but just kind of a forefront kind of functioning process and how to play games, how to acquire games easier, I think Game Pass allows you to taste games before you go out and buy games. Maybe that's going to make a big difference, and it doesn't even have. I mean, hardware may not even be the factor here. So the weaker hardware, majority of the time, especially in past video game history, has almost always come out on top. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and the point I was going to make earlier, that I got my train of thought back. The big benefit, so if you have a PC, you can upgrade year in and year out. Yeah. You've got kind of a moving target when you have that high end of hardware. But the nice part about a console is that you don't have that moving target. So for developers, they can really develop a game, target a specific platform, and really get the most out of that platform, where you don't always have that luxury on a Windows computer. So a lot of benefits for just gaming in general, and ultimately it's going to come down to the games, and we'll see. One thing I did want to bring up, kind of ironically, the Xbox Series X touts their split motherboard design and thermal properties. I don't think anybody's pointed this out yet that I've seen, but it looks a lot like a 2013 Mac Pro when you look at thermal design and system design. So some kind of irony there for Microsoft.
Was it the best compliments or imitations or something like that? It's So one of our viewers said that you could sit on your couch with consoles. You could do that with your PC if you wanted to. It would just be kind of.
Yeah, I've got a Steam Link that I've got set up where I play my computer games on my TV.
Is that still? I know we discussed it over a few episodes, but the Steam Link actually worked really well.
Yeah, it works really well. So I've got a wired network in my house, and latency is pretty low. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. The Apple TV app doesn't work that great, but I've got a couple of the Steam Link boxes that work pretty good. They were $5 on sale.
I always wondered about those. The controller, new, but yes, the box.
This shuttle launch is about to happen, so we should probably head out.
It actually got canceled.
Oh,
due to weather. As one of our the couch console viewer actually brought up that the launch got canceled, and that CNN is confirming that weather moved in and canceled it. So it'll have to be another day. Stupid weather.
Hopefully, maybe we'll have to do a shuttle launch stream on its own then.
Totally be happy to do that. That would be kind of cool. So, so you never, before we end, which one's gonna win?
So I think out of the gate, you're gonna see. If I had to pick a system to win overall, probably the PlayStation 5, just because I think they've got a bigger user base. I don't think this current generation of consoles is going to shift many people. If you're an Xbox person, you're probably going to stay an Xbox person, and vice versa. So that being said, I think you're probably going to see better games up front on the PlayStation 5 with its ease of development. In the long term, though, as people unlock the capabilities of the systems, I think you're going to see some more advanced stuff on the Xbox. But you're going to see some great experiences on both. And then a couple years down the road, PC gaming will be far beyond both.
What do you mean far? It's totally beyond both already. Like, so far beyond both. Because at least with PC gaming, if you're if a new card out, you wait 5 years to see it put into a console, you can just go out and get it, and like cross your fingers that ray tracing is actually being used in games at that time. But okay, cool. I don't think that. I think that I will pull it out. But it'll be interesting. But keep in mind, one thing you noted just a few seconds ago is people don't stay as loyal as we think. Because you went from PS2 to PS3. PS2 is still it is the highest selling system of all time. And they did not win with PS3 that generation. And Xbox 360 did extraordinarily well for that generation they were in. And when the Xbox One came out, they lost a lot of people, and there's no loyalty anymore. It's like watching an NBA game where there's just, that guy could be in that team, but next year he's probably going somewhere else because there's more money elsewhere.
Sure, it'll be interesting to see how the game stores platform lock in some of these incentives to try to get people to buy games now and continue get the version when the PS5 comes out or the Xbox Series X. So it'll be interesting to see if that adjusts things at all with kind of these lock-ins they're trying to promote.
I'd better. I know a lot of people, if they're going to buy a game today that runs on a system that's in generation, and we're so close to the next generation to come out in November, that it should just be a free upgrade to the newer system. That makes financial sense in the long run because people will stay loyal with you for doing that. But anyway, all right. Well, that is all I got for you today. Thank you for answering that. And I think that's all we got. Unless you have something else, we good? All right. Well, you all have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week, same time, same channel.